Welcome to Shadow Skull Studios. Today I will be discussing a movie which was classed as a crime thriller back 30 years ago, but I think it was more like a horror. The murders were horrific, and today I want to be discussing the murders and, in my opinion, which ones were the most gruesome and which ones were the least gruesome. And they were all quite gruesome, I have to say, but some of them worse than others. And hopefully my cat won't join us, but she might. Say hi, Lynx. Let's get started. Today I'm talking to you about this classic, Se7en, powered by brilliant performances from Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt. The movie is both terrifying and intriguing and kept me on the edge of my seat all the way from start to finish. And what makes it most unsettling is not the monsters or aliens or supernatural evil, it's that the monster is human. And somehow that is more terrifying. Horror often gives us the sense that it's not real. There's that little voice in my head that goes, "Oh, this is just a movie, it's not real." But when the instigator is a human, that comfort goes out the window. Writer Andrew Kevin Walker devises murders that felt less like killings and more like twisted moral punishments, shaped around the 7 deadly sins, each one carrying grotesque symbolisms. There is method, philosophy, and even warped sense of design, which he created moral tableaus behind each fate. The movie came out in 1995, 30 years ago, but I still think of it today. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman must solve the serial killer crimes that follow the 7 deadly sins, and they are always a few steps behind the killer. Clues are left along the way as they track down John Doe. I love the way the viewer gets clues as to how the victim has died before anyone says anything, building that apprehension as we discover the next horrifying death. There is very little gratuitous violence in the movie. Most of it is inferred, which can be more insidious than seeing the gruesome details. The sheer horror that these victims endured must have been unimaginable. The 7 deadly sins are pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth, all of which the murderer uses their sins to create almost art to depict their fates, a scenario in which they die by their sins. Kevin Spacey plays John Doe, the serial killer behind the murders. He believes that each victim deserves judgment. But was the punishment proportionate to the crime? It's clever stuff. I absolutely love these stories, where they're well thought out and use everyday things, beliefs, ideals to create the scenarios in the movies. It is like the expression, live by the sword, die by the sword. Today, I want to rank these punishments from the most merciful to the most agonizing. Not really by gore, but by cruelty suffered with degradation and psychological horror. So let's get started. Oh, and one thing, please be advised, there will be spoilers. So if you've not watched it, then you might want to switch off right now. This movie's also pretty gruesome, so there's things on here you might not want to hear. In at number 7, the least horrific for me would be wrath. Wrath is defined as extreme, intense anger, rage, or fury, often accompanied by a desire for vengeance or punishment. John Doe, the killer, bestowed the final judgment on himself by creating a scenario where the detective, David Mills, had little choice but to shoot dead Doe. The detectives followed clues created by John Doe and discovered something so horrific that Mills shoots and kills Doe, exactly how he had it planned. Number 6, envy. Death by decapitation. I feel this would be quick at the very least. And with the shock and the loss of blood, death would be mercifully swift, relatively speaking. Don't forget, I'm comparing this to the worst deaths imaginable. So the victim envied her husband's life, the murderer being able to use her death as part of another sin and scenario, and that adds a sinister touch of premeditation beyond comprehension. In at number 5, pride. He cut off her nose to spite her face. Doe disfigures a model horrifically, and then he glues a telephone in one hand and a bottle of pills in the other, where she could make the choice if she wants to live or die. This time the murderer lets her choose her own fate. Number 4, greed. A defense lawyer is forced to cut off his own flesh to create a pound of flesh, where he ultimately dies from the blood loss. Some of my reasoning behind this is that the lawyer's moral corruption makes the punishment feel, especially in Doe's logic, perversely justified. Plus, I would think that the adrenaline would kick in, and as hard and as painful as it might sound or be, it is less degrading than some of the murders that we're coming up to soon. So let's get to the top 3. So in at number 3, I'm going to go for Sloth, where the victim is tied to the bed and neglected for a full year. That takes dedication. They discover the body lying on a bed that's been tied down for a year in his own excrement. His body is decomposing, and yet, shockingly, he is still alive when the police arrive, but he does die from a heart attack from the shock of being discovered. This requires an awful lot of forethought and tending to the victim just to keep him just alive. I cannot even imagine the awfulness of this, but I would hope that the victim would have drifted in and out of consciousness without too much pain. So here we have, now we're down to the top 2, and in number 2, the last 2, I wasn't sure which one I was going to go for, but I think I'm going to go for gluttony, where the victim is force-fed spaghetti and then kicked to death. I can't even imagine how horrifically painful this would be from the very start to the very finish. I know when I've eaten too much, I feel crap. And for this poor man, for food to be shoveled into him over and over and over and over until he is so bloated he can't move, and then to be kicked to death, has to be one of the top most horrific ways to die. There is a really funny thing that I learned while I was researching this, and that is that the actor Bob Mack, who played the victim, said he was unaware that he would be surrounded by live insects until he read the daily call sheet, noticing that there was a cockroach wrangler would be on set with him. And this brings me to the top worst death in Se7en, and I would say that has to be Lust, where a prostitute is sexually assaulted by a client with a tool that is absolutely horrific. We see the tool, but we don't see what's happening, and basically she obviously bleeds to death because of the tool. I found this the most degrading fate for any woman to endure, without a shadow of doubt, and the pain that she must have endured. It would have probably took her quite a long time to die, and her demise kind of stuck with me quite a long time after I watched the movie. I found this quite awful. I wish that the murderer, because he was trying to punish people for crime against the deadly sins, I felt that the woman, the victim, was probably misplaced slightly in the fact that she's a prostitute. She's probably already been trafficked and had a rough life, and I don't think she was probably there for the lustful side of the service. So I did find that was a little, I didn't like that ending. I didn't like that death, if you can call it that. And so I put that one as the top horrific death in the 7 deadly sins in the movie Seven. There we are, but before I go, if you've not seen the movie and you're a gore fan, then you should give it a go. I feel that you won't be disappointed. Brad Pitt made some real good movies around this time, and even though he was pretty good eye candy, he wasn't a bad actor either. Well, there we go. What did you think of my list? Do you agree or disagree with my interpretation of the movie Seven? Let me know in the comments. Also, thank you for joining me today. And if you really enjoyed this, please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have, thank you so much. And hopefully I will see you soon. And maybe next time, let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. Thanks very much for coming to see me, and take it easy and enjoy life, and don't let it get too dark, okay? Thanks a lot. Goodbye.